We are just over 24 hours away from the NHL trade deadline. Let's see where everybody stacks up.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On NHL Power Rankings. I am Nick Zararis, joined by my co-host Hunter Hodes. We've got the NHL covered every single day, and Hunter, we are just over a full day away. By the time this is uploaded, it'll probably be about 24 hours to go till the deadline. And coming into this week, it felt like there was a very clear contender class, which was comprised of who we've suspected most of the season. You know, Florida's up there. I would argue Edmonton has gotten there over the last few weeks. Dallas is up there. Vegas was up there, even with the LTIR shenanigans. Even without Mark Stone, I felt pretty confident that they would be up there. But then it feels now like Vegas loaded up, and we're going to talk about specifics, teams who did well and then, but it really does kind of feel like this is a situation where the good teams have just gotten better in the last couple days.
I would say so too. And you're seeing a massive arms race, especially in the West right now, Nick. You know, Colorado, they're loading up for the playoffs. Gabriel Landeskog, it looks like, is probably going to return when they come around. And, you know, they quit on the Ryan Johansson experiment really quick and bringing in Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram. I actually like that trade for both teams, but I also really like it from a Colorado perspective because I think he's a lot better than Johansson. You have Vegas going all in once again. They are very much honestly, they're like equivalent to an NBA team with the NBA trade deadline because they go all in no matter what. They say, screw those picks. We're going all in for this year. All they care about is winning. And I feel like more NHL franchises need to adopt their mentality for how they approach the trade deadline every single year. I think that's the model front office for a trade deadline every year. And they may not even be done. They're all in as well. You have the Oilers. They've made a couple of moves as well. Still, Dallas has been a bit active. I still think they're going to make another move before the deadline wraps up. But the West right now, very big arms race for the rest of the season. The Eastern Conference, it's been a bit slower compared to the West. I still think a lot of the other East teams are going to make moves before 3 o'clock on Friday. I mean, we did see the Panthers get Tarasenko on Wednesday. The Rangers have gotten Wenberg. The Hurricanes, though, haven't made their move. The Lightning haven't really done too much as of yet. It's still a work in progress in the East, but you can definitely see who is a serious contender, especially in the Western Conference, compared to a lot of the middling and then obviously the bad teams overall this season. And I should throw out Vancouver. They've been making moves as well, and they may not even be done either.
Yeah, when you look at it, it feels very much like the West is going to be a massacre.
Yes.
I mean, you think about who's out there, and I'm flashing the power rankings now for those watching on YouTube. I mean, Vancouver, Edmonton, Vegas, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado. That's as good a 1 through 6 as we've probably had in this playoff format. And any of those 6 teams coming out of the West would not really be a shock. Like, the only real way it's a shock is, like, you know, Edmonton's goaltending holds up, or like Vegas doesn't have any injury issues and Colorado's depth issues. Like, from a perspective of like the individual holes within the given teams, it'd be a little surprising for some of them. But the talent is there for all of these teams. Like, even Winnipeg, who I know a lot of people will say you really probably shouldn't put them on that tier. They're not as high end of talent as the rest of those teams. They've got a decent top 9. They've got the best goalie in the league, and they've got one of the 10 best defensemen in the league. That's good enough to get you in the conversation. I'm not saying they're going to win the West, but it feels like those 6, Florida, the Rangers, and if you want to be kind, maybe the Hurricanes and the Leafs, but I would argue I wouldn't put either of those teams in that top tier. But in that next tier down, speaking of the Hurricanes, the Leafs, the Bruins, the wild card teams out west, we could put the Islanders in here, we can put the Flyers in here. That group, and maybe it's not fair to do this in regards to Carolina and the Leafs yet, because we still don't know. I know the Leafs, they just added Joel Edmondson in the last hour as we're recording, and they added Lyubushkin a few weeks ago. But it feels like them and Carolina, barring something substantial. Like if Carolina adds Jake Gensel, this is a different conversation. Or if the Leafs go out there and get, a top 6 forward, then maybe this is a different conversation. But it feels like that top group, those real true contenders, it feels like they're just better this year. And maybe that's the other teams not being as good, which is perfectly possible. You and I joke all the time about the parity is that there are 20 bad teams and they all beat up on each other and that keeps the standings close. But it doesn't really feel like that next tier down. And I know that's crazy to say about the Leafs who are, 9-1-0 in their last 10 and have really kind of routed into form without good goaltending and one good defenseman. But I just don't feel like that next tier down is as good as it's been in years past.
I would say that's true. And you look at, some of the wild card teams overall this season, one of them, Nick, is even selling. I mean, the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers are definitely not selling. They're the best team in the conference right now. But in terms of the wild card, you have the Philadelphia Flyers, who they have 72 points. They're top 3 in the Metro right now, but they're selling at the deadline just because they're looking at the long-term future. The Lightning, I mean, they're probably going to buy at least a little bit, but for a team like the Flyers, they don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs, even though they should be pushing their chips a little bit. I would say they should be rewarding their team a little bit more for the season they've had compared to maybe selling off some assets. And then you look at the Western Conference a little bit right now. I mean, Nashville, I think they still could look to sell off a couple of assets before this deadline is over. Yeah, I know they just traded for Anthony Beauvillier. They gave up a 4th or a 5th round pick. That's basically a free player at that point. But I still could see them selling off a little bit just because we don't really know if they're going to make the playoffs at this point. I mean, yeah, they're 6 points up on the Blues right now. They're 6 points up on the Kraken. But I still don't know how they're going to be down the stretch. I know they've won 8 of their last 10 games, but anything can happen in the final 19 to 20 games of the season. But I also don't expect Nashville to be this very aggressive buyer that's just going to go all in when you have teams like, Dallas, Winnipeg, Vancouver, Edmonton, that are all true bona fide contenders, Colorado as well. Because you look at the standings right now for Nashville, if the playoffs were to start today, they would go up against the Vancouver Canucks in the first round, and I would take the Canucks probably in 5 games if the Canucks are firing on all cylinders, because I know they've been struggling a little bit as of late. So there's definitely a bigger difference this year between the true contenders and some of the regular playoff teams, and then the teams kind of on the bubble a little bit. And that's going to make it for a very intriguing playoffs because, I mean, yeah, they're short sample sizes, but I would expect the favorites to win more often than not this year compared to last year, where I think it was a little more of a free-for-all. Maybe I'm totally wrong on that, and I could look like the biggest idiot over the next month and a half, but I feel like the favorites, especially in the playoffs this year, should actually be able to advance through, even though these are such short sample sizes.
Yeah, no, hockey's got the highest variance of any postseason in the 4 major sports. We talk about that quite often. That's part of what makes the hockey playoffs both beautiful and maddening, is that the best team often doesn't win. It's the team that's in the better form at the time because it's such a short period of time. We're talking about 7 games over a 13-day period. And for a lot of teams, all it takes is a couple bad bounces. I mean, you give the 130-point Bruins of last year a mulligan in any of the overtime games they lose to Florida in round 1 last year. The entire narrative about the Panthers this year is different, and that team looks very different.
They had a breakaway, Nick, at the end of game 5. They were potentially about to win the series right at the end of regulation. They make the save, and then the Panthers win that game in overtime, and then boom, the rest is history in that series. That's how close the Panthers were to losing.
It's really that crazy when you think about it in the context of, we're talking about coin flips, especially in the games that get to overtime and in the playoff series that have multiple games go to overtime. I mean, if you were to go back and flip a coin all the times it took the Leafs since 2016, 2017, when they started making the playoffs consistently, if you flipped a coin in every single one of the overtime losses that they lost in those series, to whether it be the Bruins or the Canadians and the bubble, we're talking about a very different narrative as far as what the Leafs are. No, excuse me. The Leafs lost to the Blue Jackets in the bubble, and they lost to the Canadians the following year in the Canada playoff in the 56 game season. There we go. All right. That'll do it for this first part of today's episode. In a moment, we are going to talk about how you approach the deadline based on where your team is at. No matter how well the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. It's the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applicants that might have your must-meet requirements, or else you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. One of the things I love about Indeed is everything is all in one place. You can take job-related tests, you can set up meetings, and you can schedule appointments through the website. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/locked on to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Want to thank everybody hanging out with us today on this Thursday, trade deadline eve. When we're talking about the deadline conceptually, I know this is more of an opinion amongst I'll say the statistics community, that you don't want the mystery box. You don't want the draft picks down the road, and you don't want the prospects who are, second or third rounders, especially from teams who draft well. I was talking about this earlier because I recorded a hit for the national show about the Noah Hannafin trade, trading him to Vegas. And they acquired a 26-year-old who has spent a lot of time in the KHL. So I know he doesn't have a lot of NHL games as a 26-year-old. A lot of people, that sets off red flags immediately. But the biggest question mark I have in regards to getting a prospect, not even a prospect, a player like that, is what if Vegas knew this guy was good? Vegas needs bodies. Vegas needs defensemen. If this guy were good and he were cheap at 26, he would be playing for them right now. That is where I start to get worried as far as getting the mystery box. You look at it, whether it's trading with the Stars, who the Flames did, you look at it trading with the Lightning when they were going through their window of contention, where if those teams are willing to give you the prospects, they're probably not that good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that really only matters if you're getting purely the best player on the market. And, I come from a Penguins perspective. I'm one of the hosts of the Locked On Penguins podcast. And as of this recording right now, 12:15 on Thursday afternoon, Jake Guentzel has not been traded yet. Kyle Dubas, for everything I've been told, he's set a very high asking price on him. And this is one thing, Nick, where I would maybe push back to, because if you were willing to get really good prospects back for Jake Guentzel, that means, okay, that team is willing to go all in with the best player on the market and give up arguably potentially their best prospect. I think for almost any other player that's on the market, I would agree with you, but not for someone like Guentzel who, pre-40 goal scorer, you can put him on any line. So for something like that, if a team is willing to give you their top prospect and potentially a really good roster player, even if they're pretty good, that's where I'm kind of at with that. Because if you give up a pretty good roster player and a good prospect for someone like Guentzel, that should show that, yeah, they don't want to give those players up, but they're really serious about winning and getting Guentzel. Any other situation, though, I would agree with prospects. You saw that with the Hannafin trade because, the prospect that the Flames got back, I don't really think he's that good. And the picks you got back, those are magic beans. And, my deadline philosophy of, if I was a GM, and I know I'll never be a GM, I'm always all in no matter what if I have the core to do it. It's why, if I was, Ken Holland or Brad Treliving, I would be doing everything in my power to go after some of the top players on the market. I wouldn't just be trying to, shore up depth defensemen like Brad Treliving is doing right now. I don't really like the two moves that he's made. I think they could use some more scoring in the lineup because, what if Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander and company go cold for a few games in a playoff series? That's all it can take for you to basically be gone. because they're short sample size series. So that's kind of how I see my philosophy going into the trade deadline. I'm always all in if I have the core that can do it. I'm always trying to bolster my lineup when it comes to scoring. I'm not really too interested in some of the bad, big depth defensemen and giving up assets to get them. Even though the picks are probably not going to turn into anything, I'm still just not that interested in getting those types of players. I would rather spend those assets elsewhere, is what I think I'm trying to say. So in most cases, bringing it full circle, Nick, I agree. Most times if a team is giving up a prospect or pick, especially for prospects, it means those prospects are not good. But for a situation like Jake Gensel, if a team is giving up their best prospect and even a pretty good roster player, that shows that, man, I don't want to have to give this up, but I'm willing to do it to get the best player on the market.
So my counterpoint to your counterpoint would be, I think it depends who you're trading with. I think that's the biggest thing is when you're talking with a team like Dallas, who drafts very well and hits on a lot of their second and third round picks. I mean, you look at the core of that team, and it's a lot of guys they've been able to put through their system and develop and take their time with, versus, a team like Vegas or a team like the Leafs or a team like the Rangers, who generally speaking, because they're consistently competitive, they don't really have time to let these guys develop at the NHL level, where if they're good right away, great, they stick. But if not, I mean, how long have we been waiting for Nick Robertson to break through with the Leafs? I mean, this is what, year 3 of him floating around the perimeter, of being an NHLer, even though he probably is capable of playing as one. They don't feel like they're afforded the liberty of waiting. So as far as Gensel and him, we could probably say Buchnevich as well, maybe Jacob Chikrin if he's available. I know he's maybe available, he might not be available, but players of that tier, I don't necessarily disagree with you that those are the types of guys you want to be pushing chips in for. But I think the larger point at hand is when you are the team that's selling the assets, the best thing you can get are draft picks, in my opinion, as opposed to prospects, in my opinion, because draft picks are infinitely more liquid. You can do more with draft picks than you are with a player. You're locked into a player once you acquire a player. And some of these trades, I mean, Anthony Mantha went for draft picks for like 3 years from now. Like Washington got draft picks to take guys who are 16 years old right now. That they got guys who are in, 10th grade. They got draft picks to take guys who are in 10th grade for a guy who's going to be in Vegas's top 9 on what they imagine is going to be a deep playoff run. So I don't necessarily disagree with you from the perspective of if it's a good prospect, great. But a lot of this is subjective, prospect lists, rankings, all of that stuff, the public stuff, like, what the different publications do, that's probably pretty different from what these pro scouting departments are looking at. I mean, the Flames got like 4 defensemen in a span of a month, 4 prospect defensemen in the span of a month. And, maybe one of them has a chance of being a consistent NHLer. It just feels like teams take on a lot of risk. And I feel like it's very hard for the team that's trading the good player to get good value, in all honesty. Like, I think no matter what, I think the Penguins are probably going to get shortchanged on what Gensel's worth, just because it's so hard to get good value in a trade in the NHL.
I've resigned myself to the fact that they're probably not going to get as much as they want to, even though I know Kyle Dubas has set a pretty high price to get Gensel out of Pittsburgh. I mean, I also know he wanted to have this finalized on Wednesday night, and now we're into Thursday afternoon, and the deal has not been agreed to yet. I understand what you're saying when it comes to you'd rather have draft picks. For me, I think I would rather have a really good prospect that's really close to NHL ready compared to a draft pick that is not going to be ready for a few years. And that also maybe coming from my perspective, considering, I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins and Sidney Crosby doesn't have too much time left as a member of the team.
Wouldn't you rather have draft picks because you'd be able to flip them again? Wouldn't that make more sense for you guys as opposed to a prospect, which you got to find a specific team that's going to be interested in that guy?
See, I think so, but I think they're going to get more draft picks in some other deals that they make that they can flip for other assets over the summer to probably go all in over the summer heading into next season. For example, I think they could get a draft pick or two for Lars Eller. I think the same for Alex Nedeljkovic. He's been one of the really good 1B or backup goaltenders in the league this year. I think you could get something for Riley Smith as well. I don't think you're going to get like a second round pick for Riley Smith, but I think you could get a mid-round pick for him. A team will see what he's done in the playoffs and they'll want to pay up to get him at least a little bit. I think in terms of the Gensel trade alone, I would rather get pieces that can help right now and next season compared to draft picks where those are 4 to 5 years down the line. And by that point, Sidney Crosby is probably not playing in the NHL anymore. He's going to be 40, 41 by that time. But for other deals that this team makes in particular, I would rather see draft picks coming back just because I don't think you're going to get bona fide prospects and all that. So in a way, it kind of depends on the situation. I think if you have a really good star player, I would rather get pieces back that can help you win now compared to well in the future. Rather for other assets who aren't as good, I can take back some draft picks and get the cap space over the summer, and then you can also use some of those picks to help you upgrade the team with more cap space once the offseason starts. So that's just my philosophy, though. That's how I see it.
All right, that'll do it for this part of today's edition of the Locked On NHL Power Rankings. We will be right back, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about some of the moves we've liked that teams have made over the last couple of days. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. And there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling great all day. What are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. The 2-minute meals are restaurant-quality meals that are ready to heat and eat whenever you are. Fun stuff like pancake smoothies and other more delicious and enjoyable experiences. No prep, no mess. The best part, I hate doing the dishes. As soon as you warm it up, you eat out of the tray, toss the tray, all done. Factor is the perfect solution if you are looking for fast premium options with no cooking required. Sign up and save. It is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 and use code LockedOnNHL50 to get 50% off. That's code LockedOnNHL50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL to get 50% off. And we also are going to talk about our friends at Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from the other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. And as we wrap up today's show, I want to thank everybody who's hanging out. This is the fun time of the season. We're getting into that stretch run now where most teams have about something in the neighborhood of 15, 20 games to go. As we talked about in the first segment, the contenders are shoring up, finalizing what their lineups are going to look like. I know I saw earlier today the Canucks are going to sign Phil Kessel to a contract, so he will be playoff eligible if they want to use him at some point down the road. But as far as who won the deadline, I think when we start doing the winners and losers, I think we're a little too and we just talked about this in the last segment. I think we are a lot more deferential to the team getting the quality player just because we know what a crapshoot the draft and prospects are. You know, a first round pick only has about a 20% chance of playing 200 games in the NHL. That's not a good hit rate, in all honesty. You know, if we're talking about 1 in 5, 1 out of every 5 first round picks becoming an NHL regular, that's not a great return. And you go further and further down, and those odds, you know, by the time we get to 4th rounders, 5th rounders, we're talking about single digit percentages of those guys ever making the NHL and playing more than 200 games. So that's kind of the framing I want to use. But I think very clearly Vegas has had the most impactful deadline of anybody so far.
And they're not close to done yet. I mean, you know, they got Anthony Mantha, they've got Noah Hannafin. What else are they going to do, Nick? Are they going to go try?
I think they're going to do Riley Smith. I think they're going to do Riley Smith again.
I think so too. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think they'll give up a mid-round pick to get him. It's obvious that, you know, I wouldn't say it's obvious, but I think part of me feels like he doesn't want to be in Pittsburgh anymore. I don't know if he really even wanted to be in Pittsburgh in the first place. Again, that's just my dumb opinion probably, but I'm sure he would totally welcome going back to Vegas after what happened last year. So that would make all the sense in the world. I know everyone likes to laugh just because, or get mad also just because of their salary cap situation and all that. But hey, if you're not doing what Vegas is doing, you're not doing enough. Sorry, but that's how I see it. You know, they know what they're doing when it comes to this, and they take advantage of it every single year. Teams have got to stop answering when Kelly McCrimmon calls because he is just going to fleece every team out there. I didn't like what the Flames got back for Hannafin. The Capitals trade with Mantha, I honestly was a bit more harsh on it from a Capitals perspective. I think the Capitals could have gotten a bit more from Mantha, to be honest. And I know his value was really low at this point last year, but he bounced back in a big way, had a 20-goal season. I've seen 20-goal scores go for more than what the Caps got back for Mantha. That's how I see it, at least. So I really like their deadline. I already mentioned Colorado, Nick. I mean, the business that they had to move out Johansson, giving up on him that quick, realizing that was a mistake, trading for Casey Middlestat, and then sending Bowen Byram back, which, I mean, that's a crazy deal. I did not expect them to move Bowen Byram, and I think Byram is going to really help the Sabres long term. But, you know, now they have Middlestat down the middle. Landeskog is coming back. They get Walker also from Philadelphia to shore up their blue line. Originally, I kind of laughed that they gave up a first for him, but then I just quickly realized, like, oh, yeah, wait, they're all in. They don't really care about a first-round pick. They're going for another Stanley Cup. So I really like the moves that both Vegas and Colorado have made so far. The Oilers, I like Adam Henrique as a player. I think a first-round pick for him is a little bit rich, but I also don't think they're going to care about that first-round pick if they win the Stanley Cup. So that's all that matters for the Edmonton Oilers at this point. But yeah, my two big winners so far, Vegas, Colorado. I think Florida also did a really good job with the Tarasenko trade.
He wasn't expensive. I don't really think
they gave Ottawa. What'd you say?
Tarasenko was cheap. That was the biggest thing. They didn't have to give up a lot.
No, they didn't really have to give up anything at all. And I also do think the NMC hampered Ottawa a little bit. I still think they maybe could have gotten a little bit more back for him, but I like that move a lot from a Florida perspective. Those are the quick winners that come to mind right away. I think that Henrique trade could turn out to be a big winner if the Oilers go really far in the playoffs, but, you know, definitely Colorado, Vegas, Florida really jump out at me so far.
All right, so to wrap up here, of the guys that are still available, Gensel, Buchnevich, there are a couple guys who are still intriguing out there. Duclair is out there, Jason Zucker is out there, Nick Bukestad is out there, maybe Jordan Eberle is out there, Frank Vetrano is out there. There are interesting ideas out there. Other than Buchnevich, Gensel, is there anybody that really interests you if you're a team that's trying to be competitive? Like I've been advocating for like 2 weeks now that the Jets should trade for Buchnevich. I think you drop him into that top 6. That gives them a level of depth they haven't really had at any point during the Connor Hellebuck era since the 2018 season where they lost to Vegas in the conference final. But I just feel that there are quite a few teams. You mentioned Vancouver looks like they're still going to be looking to add. Vegas is probably still looking to add. I know it feels like the Kings have been strangely quiet, even though they're in a playoff spot at the moment. I'm curious, being that they fired their coach, if maybe they're looking to add too. I'm very curious to see how the next day and a half shakes out. And I hope teams like Winnipeg, LA, Vancouver, I hope they don't take Vegas going this crazy as like maybe we should take a step back because we can't beat them. I want the arms race. Like you said, I want to see these teams keep loading up. I hope Gensel ends up somewhere. Okay, I take that back. Other than Carolina, I hope Jake Gensel ends up somewhere where he can be competitive. Because if he ends up in Carolina, then I'm worried about playing.
Nick just wants the Rangers to trade for Jake Gensel.
I do. I would like him or Buchnevich. I'd be fine with Duclair or Vetrano, but those are not the same caliber of player as Buchnevich or Gensel. Gensel's 2-time 40-goal guy. Buchnevich has been a 2-time point per game guy. Those are genuine, bona fide first-line needle mover types. There's nothing wrong with adding the goal scorer type like Duclair or Vetrano, but those guys need more to go their way to be impactful.
I'll give you two more before we close this out. I think Jordan Eberle for sure could help a playoff team. I think he makes a lot of sense for some of the top contenders. You can play him anywhere in your lineup, probably the second or third line, but you can put him on your top line if you want to as well. One more I got for you, Nick, and we'll have to see if this team decides to move him. Tyler Toffoli. I would keep tabs on that situation. He has 26 goals, 44 points in 61 games. He's been one of the Devils' best players this year. And with how that season has gone so far with New Jersey, I would not be surprised to see him get moved by the deadline on Friday. He could help virtually any contender, any playoff team out there for the rest of the season and into the playoffs. I would definitely keep tabs on that. I would give up a decent amount to get Toffoli if I were a GM on any team.
I saw somebody jokingly say, and I'm going to steal this idea because I forgot who said it, the Devils should trade Tyler Toffoli and use the assets they get for Tyler Toffoli to trade for Buchnevich and give Buchnevich an extension instead of extending Tyler Toffoli. Because Buchnevich is a better player and they're probably going to cost, and Buchnevich is under term for next year at a reasonable number. Toffoli, you're going to have to iron out an extension. So I think that's at play. No goalies really out there. So keep an eye on the social media as we get into the next day and a half. Things will continue to happen. It's an exciting time as a hockey fan. But that'll just about do it for this week's edition of the Locked On NHL Power Rankings. I think we're both in agreement that the West is significantly better than the East. And if any of the 6 teams that are currently in divisional playoff spots came out of the West, it wouldn't be a real surprise. So let's see what they have cooking. Let's see what the Rangers, maybe the Leafs, the Hurricanes. It's an exciting time. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On NHL wherever you get your podcast. Drop the show the nice 5-star review. If you're over on YouTube, drop the video a like, subscribe. We'll talk to you guys real soon.